Coming next, we are going to start with the first talk of this track, and we will have Hasain starting with his talk. Thank you so much. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. So, good morning, everybody. Let's see if we got the screen. Yes, thank you. Nice to be here again. Nice to be in Bucharest. It's always a pleasure to visit different cities, and some cities are a bit more special. I used to say Bucharest reminds me a lot of the city I grown up in, which was Damascus. The vibe, the people, the chaotic traffic, the buildings, and there is some also connection with the dictatorship that was at the time I lived there. So, yeah, a lot of it in common, right? So, nevertheless, my name is Hasain. I have been in the business for 3 decades plus. I think you can say that I have done everything, almost everything you can do within IT security, cybersecurity, from being a developer all the way to doing advisory. But I still have a lot of fingers and a lot of jars where that's the fun is, or rather said, a lot of deep rabbit holes from day to day. So I do assist our offensive team. I do assist our incident response team doing investigations and so on, which I find very, very fun still. So let's talk about today's topic. Throughout the years, all of these incident engagements we have been through, and all of these offensive engagements we've been through, and everything surrounding that, we've seen a lot of persistency for good and bad. Offensive people does a lot of persistency stuff. The threat actors or the bad guys, girls maybe as well, does that as well. The threat actors of today, the cyber criminals of today, does that as well. And it's not always the way you imagine it is, right? I used to say the offensive world is more of an academic version of the real world. Kind of, because we tend to, when we need to solve something, we tend to think a bit more advanced than necessary. We tend to complicate things as human beings. Oh, I want to have the most advanced persistency ever. Why? Because that's cool, or something. I can write a paper about it. But is it that way it works in the real world? Is it what actually been used out there? Or how does it look like, right? I don't know. Many of you have certainly have had reflections about these kind of questions. I don't know how much you have seen, but let's dig into some. We start with some facts and statistics. This is based on the work we do. This is a summary of 2024. We're just about to end 2025. I know the team is working on this year's statistics, but the differences are not big, right? Whenever we step in an incident engagement, there is an active threat actor, more or less. Either they are just finishing their work because they work. These are corporates, the larger cyber criminal syndicates, or they are just business as any other regular business. So they go to work early morning, they finish their work later afternoon. Some of them are actually 8 to 5 people. No, they don't do overtime. They don't do vacations. Not working on vacations, right? That's it. So what we see is that the vast majority is that we still have ransomware as a big portion of this pie. We still have a lot of business email compromise. We still have a lot of other classic ones that jumps into this. So based on vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. This is a statistic about how often we are there where there is actually a running threat actor in the environment. Not every time an incident is business disruption. Sometimes you get it a little bit before it's turning into a disaster. A few more statistics. What are the big how this happens, what are the big entry points or entry vectors. We see a lot of phishing. That's the business email compromise part of the chart, right? So almost everything behind that is kind of a phishing style something, right? Telling the user to click on something, telling the user to do something, telling the user to run code on his or her machine. So it starts with an identity theft or an identity seizure or something like that. Then we have the other big portion, which is vulnerabilities. Here we talk about -1 till n day style vulnerabilities. People talk about 0 day. We used to talk about -1 when we do incident investigations because sometimes it is not a 0 day. Nobody else knows about it. Somebody done very good research. I was about to use the F word, but yeah, it is not a 0 day yet because nobody knows about it. And suddenly things started happening, and a vendor might or might not get notified, and so on and so forth. But that's not the biggest one worth mentioning. 2024, including 2025 so far, I dare to say we have seen something 0 day or before 0 day this many times for about 400 investigations we've done. Right? That's nothing in numbers. That's not the message you hear out there. Yeah, sophistication level, this and that, and they did with some magic breach something. In reality, what they breach, things that has not been patched for several years. We used to talk about the end day vulnerabilities. You can certainly talk about the end year vulnerability. There is a patch, nobody has patched it. Or the product is end of life. It's not patchable. When I ask the customer, when did you patch your product last time? I was 2 years ago. Is it fully patched? Yes. So you're telling me your product is end of life? Oh, yeah. And when you're not paying those licenses, when you're not paying for the additional extended support, your product is not going to be not vulnerable anymore. It just, you are not getting any patches. There are patches, but you're not paying for them, you're not getting them, you cannot apply them. Right? So have these as food for thought. So, talking about persistency, we cannot unmention reverse shells. I guess there are a few here that are offensive, right? Doing some research. I think you recognize some of these. My first tool I did when I did some pen testing back in the mid-late 90s was Netcat. Actually, Netcat and Telnet, alternatively, either one of these, and a shell of your choice. So you could pipe shell input-output to two Netcat processes, and then connecting two sessions to them. You have your input screen, your output screen. Awesome. That was the 97, 96-ish C2 communication style, something. When you pop a shell based on a vulnerability, you will probably talk about reverse shells. Depending on the platform you're using, whether it's PHP, Perl, or Python or something, or ASP.NET, or Java, or anything else, there are ways to do this, right? It's just a Google away, and nowadays probably people would say it's just an AI prompt away, right? So, but this is not our focus. This is something we have done throughout the years, and yes, somebody would consider this as advanced, right? Well, you need some kind of logic understanding for the tool you're using. But it's really about just choosing the tool of your choice for today, right? So find something, test it out, whether it works or not, and then, yeah, go by that. You see there are a few PowerShell something right there as well. So it is possible to do this with these kind of tooling. So what about everything we keep reading about and listening to experts saying, yeah, this was a very advanced persistency. This was like custom-made code, agent this, agent that, compiled with obfuscation and anti-debugging mechanisms and so on and so forth. When I started my career back in the day, started doing this, when we progressed into, the 2000s and beyond that, we started seeing a lot of these custom-built agents popping up. I think some of you recognize where this picture is from, right? Cobalt Strike, the infamous agent ever, maybe I would say, because they don't just have an agent, they have a complete ecosystem behind the scenes. So agents connecting to something, and then there is an orchestration, console and so on, which is very, very nice for the offensive guy or the threat actor. You have your management console and you get them all. So Cobalt Strike is trying to decoy its traffic, trying to melt into your traffic in terms of, just making outbound connectivity with TLS or anything suitable, by frequently changing the certificates and the fingerprints and all of that, trying to avoid being catched. There are a few other similar agents to be mentioned. Qbot is a recent one. Qbot has been used by a few ransomware actors until recent time. It's still in use, as far as I know. That is also decoying itself and trying to, I'm just an innocent, TLS connection here. Don't look at me. I don't do anything strange. Or I'm just, an SSH connection. Don't worry. This is just somebody doing SSH over there. Reality tells us this is something that more or less belongs to the past. Today's threat actor, they are not really using this anymore. Not to the extent that we believe or we have seen previously that this was used. So what else are they using? Well, welcome to today's tool of your choice. I mentioned Netcat, right? The Netcat replacement today is kind of curl. I think everybody knows what curl is. Just a CLI tool that helps you download and upload and fix everything. If you're a developer or busy in downloading stuff, you go to your console and just curl it down. There are a few people that still do wget, right? Yeah. That's useful as well, but this is nicer. What do you think this command line does? This is a one-liner, by the way. The screen doesn't fit if you want to read it. What do you think this does? Any ideas? Curl nowadays runs on Windows. It is actually built in. So out of the box, standard installed Windows box, you do have curl. You do have SSH as well, just to mention that. So these tools are not anymore, Linux domain, Unix domain-ish. They do exist on Windows, which have made an impact and changed a lot of the behavior. So do you see any special characters that draws your attention here? If I say pipe, you see the pipe character? Right? When you redirect input-output between two processes, more pipe, find string, or grep, or something like that, right? You see a couple of those pipe characters, right? And the thing in between is a PowerShell, and it said PowerShell -command -. And then there is a mysterious to larger than ampersand 1, right? What does that do? That 2 larger than ampersand 1, what does that do? Any suggestions? Anybody from? Redirecting standard error to standard output. Excellent. Right? So obviously, somebody wants to know even if there is an error message. Just give me that one. I'm not only willing to see. Because the pipe will bother about the standard output. right? I want to see the errors as well. Tell me if something is going bad here, not just a... So what does the dash command dash do then? Anybody knows PowerShell here? The new bash, or whatever you can call it. What does the dash stands for in, like, this is a universal all operating system something. If you just see a dash in a command line without any something right after it or before it, what is it? A command from sort? Sorry, pre? What the command, but if it's not, there is no character right after it, nothing right before it. So it's not dash A, dash something, just a standalone dash. That's actually standard input. It's a kind of a universal, yeah, I will take your standard input here. So that PowerShell will execute a command that comes through the standard input. And it will also include the standard error in the standard output. So if you push something through the first pipe, it will execute that. And whatever comes out of it, it will push it to the next pipe through the next. And before and after those pipes, we do see curl. What does curl do here? You see some similarities in the command line of the two curls? Dash dash resolve. Dash dash resolve, what does that do? Without Googling, without AI. So to help you, the dash dash resolve is actually a built-in, you will not use DNS. What I'm telling you here is that, hey, if you want to resolve this, then it's this IP address. So that's like a locally defined resolver in curl itself. So I tell curl, hey, if you want to go to Windows Update, then it's this IP address. You don't need to bother about DNS or something like that. It's very useful when you're a developer testing something. I don't want to mess with my host file. I can do it directly in curl. So this thing connecting to windowsupdate.com on port 6065 and is grabbing something from /t/a. That's the first curl command, right? So whomever looks at this from a forensic perspective, yeah, curl connected to Windows Update. That's what they see in the headers and the messaging and the HTTP. Everything says curl connected to Windows Update. And Windows Update might have a lot of different IP addresses in the world, right? There's a gigantic CDN network for Windows Update. So why not this IP address stated there could be? Now, localhost is obviously not. This is just for the demo, right? So if somebody looking at the firewalls, yeah, it's another something connected to Windows Update from this machine, don't bother about that. This is nothing dangerous. So the first one is downloading, because there is just S is be silent. Please don't tell, every CLI tool says, yeah, I'm curl, version this and that. Copyright, go grab something here, this URL. Be silent, don't do that, we know it. And then it's grabbing something, it's outputting as standard output to PowerShell, which execute that something. And the result from that will be piped into the next curl, which does what? It says curl dash capital T. The T stands for upload, yeah. Whatever, transfer something, right? Put, maybe transfer. And also be silent and do the resolve on your own and go put it on the same IP or URL /o/a. What is the T dash? So there is a dash T and then dash again. We said dash what? Standard input. So whatever comes out of the PowerShell process will be treated as standard input and pushed to the file, because the A now is a file we are uploading information to. So this is the simplest ever C2 communication you can actually see. Let's go to a machine of our choice. I have two files here, and I have this guy down here. I just did the mimic on my machine here. I have two files. One is the O, and the other one is the A. So you see them up here. Sorry, one is the command, the task to be performed. I'm telling it, hey, output the host name, please, and this is the result, A. So if I just push that curl command, it says, yeah, I'm running on SRv03. Right? As simple as that. I have two files. I navigate or push tasks and work to my agent. Save that one. Go back. Repush that one. Yeah, this is the current folder I'm working on. I'm running this on the same machine now, but in reality, this would be somebody telling the user to run code. Click phishing, click jacking, click whatever, social engineering, you name it. There are different flavors, different naming today. Hey, can you run this piece of code? Because this is the updated list of who's going to leave, who's going to stay in the organization. People will happily run that because they want to see that list. They want to understand if they have their job left or not. And as simple as that, it can actually, well, we have seen out there in the wild, what this does, the code they execute is as simple as putting together a scheduled task. So C2 scheduled task, they will not call it C2 scheduled task, obviously. And the trigger will be, yeah, run it on a special, I want you to grab a command to be executed once a day. I'm happy with that. Ping pong, execute the command, give the results, and then do your next thing next day. That's a super low and slow. That will not be noisy, or you can be as noisy as you want. And by the way, every time you do this, then execute PowerShell with that one-liner. Is this fancy enough? Is this what you were imagining, thinking, like, I want to be invisible in terms of I don't want to be noticed, right? Is this going to make it? You can do all sorts of weird triggers here. Scheduling a task in Windows or in any other systems is a very nice tooling. I can bind this to whenever somebody do a right-click on a folder. If a user does a right-click on a folder, then this will trigger. If a user copies a file, then this will trigger. If a user signs in or signs out, this will trigger. So there doesn't need to be any, just keep it as random as possible, because that will help make this artifact as a, yeah, well, this happened a few times before, like the last 10 days, and who says this is dangerous? Right? And once again, this is living of the land, all built-in tools. Nothing new has been introduced. Curl nowadays is a perfectly signed Windows binary. Why I'm talking about Windows? Because most of the incident response cases we have are enterprise environments where they naturally run Windows, both on servers and clients. Yes, there are other operating systems, but then there are other flavors. Curl can be used the same way in Unix-style operating systems, read Linux, whatever. You just remove the shell, PowerShell, and put another shell in there of your choice. So it's really the same type of thing. Okay, that's one built-in tool. The next built-in tool, SSH. Security people back in the days were very, oh, you know what? No, when I read my emails, I do an SSH connection, an SSH tunnel, because I don't know who's looking at my traffic. Then I read my email through the tunnel. right? This is when I grew up. I don't know if somebody's thinking that way nowadays. Maybe. I'm not doing SSH tunneling anymore when I read my emails. I know TLS is actually a pretty good protection nowadays. But this simple SSH command connects to an online service, surveyo.net, and it makes an SSH outbound SSH connection. Because in most enterprise environments, outbound connections from not only clients, but also servers is perfectly fine and allowed. Will you be suspicious if your server or a bunch of your servers are making outbound SSH connections? Will you see it? Will you notice it? Do you monitor for that? So this establishes an outbound SSH connection, and it establishes a tunnel. In this particular case, it tunnels back 3389, which is the protocol or port number for the RDP protocol. We used to call RDP the ransomware deployment protocol, because that's what the ransom gangs are using. This is actually from many different ransomware cases. Yeah, you can just change the server they're connecting to, but it's really as simple as this. They're somewhere, they somehow got a foothold in the network. And then, yeah, what do we need to do next? Running a UI is much easier than doing command line. I want to run RDP. Yeah, SSH, reverse tunnel. RDP. Yay, I can click my tools. They are just like us. They are just regular IT dudes, but doing illegal business. So there are a few flavors of that, and ngrok, surveyor.net, localhost.run, etc. And when you go to any of these sites, it says, yeah, hey, welcome. Click here to start. This is what you need to punch in, and you're go. This is very popular among developers and ransomware gangs. I don't know how you identify yourself, but which I want my application to be available for the public world. I want my peers to be able to poke into my application. Vibe coding, be not. So do this, expose that port, 3080, whatever it is, and then just go on. And this can be used by anything else, as said, both legitimate and less legitimate ones. If I switch for a little bit to the offensive world, if you guys in our offensive team, they came to me, this must have been now 10 years ago or 10 to 15 years ago. Hey, you're into certificates and identity and PKI and key management. Do you have any idea how we can establish a new C2 channel without being discovered? So you want to sneak with TLS? I said, oh, well, everybody else is trying to do that. I know there is an awesome session about TLS, something later on in this track. But okay, you don't want to use TLS and do a lot of fancy things. Okay, you know what? We can check certificate validation with a protocol called OCSP. As far as I know, OCSP does allow you to send arbitrary data, which is by nature encrypted and signed. And no, there is no reversing protocol or enterprise firewall that will check the OCSP, because OCSP is OCSP. The meaningfulness of it, I send a certificate identifier and it will get back a response. And it's up to me to send additional information. That's the protocol spec, says optional extensions may be processed by the OCSP responder. Or not. So we actually invented our own C2 channel. This is the code it required. to generate the payload. This is .NET, all built in Windows, nothing strange. I don't need to invent any libraries or something like that, just living off the land once again. So what I do, I take a message and I encode the message to an ASN1 encoding, and then encrypt it with the recipient part's public key, and then send it for a certificate status check. Easy. And on the wire, it will look something like that. Yeah, it just looks as another extension, legitimate extension of the OCSP communication. Everything is rubbish when I look at it. Only the server and the client understand what that is. And when somebody looks, what is this client looking? Nah, it's just checking the validity of another certificate. And there is actually an OCSP responder on the other side that correctly behaves and responds back with correct amount of data. If anybody wants to use this code, talk to me later. Or make a picture. So, what else? Anybody recognize these two guys? You hopefully shouldn't. Or recognize the APT group. So there was an APT group called APT-10, Advanced Persistent Threat Group. Their operations stretched between 2008, 2006, and 2017, 2018. That's a long-term operation. Their main target was anything related to Department of Defense, military things, industries, et cetera, et cetera. And they left a footprint on almost all of the big MSPs in the world, managed service providers. If you can just name a global MSP, they have been there. Their operation became called Cloud Hopper, hence the focus on the MSP side and so on. We did an investigation in Sweden. I'm based in Sweden, by the way. We did an investigation for one of our customers in the Nordics when this was not known as a Cloud Hopper. This was 2016 when we did the investigation. It was just the last year-ish before they got known. And we ended up in seeing a lot of interesting things going on there. So what they basically did is they used something called DLL search order hijacking or sideloading or DLL sideloading. I know there is a DLL sideloading session today, I guess, or something, right? So have a check on that one. It's an interesting matter. What they did, you can suddenly observe, oh, why is an admin running NVIDIA setup on a virtual machine? We don't have NVIDIA cards on our virtual machines. Yeah, but it's just NVIDIA setup, right? That's not dangerous. That's a full admin doing something again, right? You can do side loading by many different ways. You just figure out, oh, this binary is depending on these DLLs, these libraries. And if I just change one of the libraries to another one of my own specs, then that application will happily load my code. Now, the code can be more or less obfuscated, more or less impossible to debug or something like that, more or less dynamic, et cetera, et cetera. So just really take one of these DLLs this thing is dependent on, make your own version with all the calls in place, and then do your code in between. Right? So this was back in, 2008, 2006 to 2018. This is a modern version of the same thing. This is not even a year old. This is how a threat actor in a ransomware case installed their persistency. To make this story shorter, what they did, they focused on a very specific DLL. The DLL that included their magic code was the WSC API. And that stands for Windows Security Center API. There's no vulnerability in the Windows Security Center. It's not about that. So threat actor, okay, we use the Windows Security Center API call, and then we make our own DLL, and then we put our code in there, and anything that is dependent on this guy, that something can be used by us to sideload our DLL, our code. So this, yes, it was called install.bat. Now there are no more fancy names in here. And what this did, it just checked a few things. One of the binaries it actually used is the OneDrive standalone updater. Because the OneDrive standalone updater does actually use the WSC API DLL. Another tool they used is the Titan Plus RMM software tool, because it also did use that DLL. And also another thing that you see there, ODBC config obviously does use that DLL or knows how to use that DLL, right? And then they had like the if statement there. It says, okay, is there a CrowdStrike Falcon in here or not? If there is a CrowdStrike Falcon, we load our DLL this way. If there is not, we load it this way. So either we use the OneDrive updater or we register the DLL as regsvr or regsvc. The target goal will be our DLL will get alive and load and then be consumed by the system, and our code will be executing. So I've done some checks and balances. Avoid CrowdStrike Falcon. If it is there, then do this. It's still there, but it's not going to be able to see what's going on. Right? Let's have a look at something where this thing actually was used. And let's also have a look at how this thing started. I said this was a ransomware case, right? Is this readable for you? We do like this. Now it's readable. Teams message send. This is how it started. So a threat actor sends a Teams message to a user on an organization of your choice. They actually send the same message to multiple users. One of them picks up the line and responds to the message. Say, yeah, we see that you have been getting a lot of rubbish emails the last couple of days, because they did actually orchestrate a mail bombing campaign towards those users. So if you would get that, yeah, I don't know what's happening, but I'm getting tons of emails every day, and it's annoying as H. So please help. And then they initiate the Teams call. Once the Teams call is running, or soon after that, something special happens in the system. See that line? What does the tool read? Quick Assist. Anybody knows the Quick Assist? It's a Microsoft tool. What is it used for? Remote support. Is it a hacking tool? No. Is it digitally signed? Yes. This is from a Microsoft store, and this is a Microsoft-created tool for 100% legitimate purposes and above. So they have the Teams call. They convince the user, hey, you need to download Quick Assist and give us control over your PC. Otherwise, you will keep getting those emails annoying you. Right? So a lot of things happens with the Quick Assist. When you install something, there are a lot of things going on. And then we see Quick Assist is finally launching. And we start seeing a lot of other things. Remember that line? You see that if statement? That was what they actually did. Did the EDR in question reacted on this? Because this data I'm showing you here is from the EDR on that machine. So they downloaded that zip file, as you see it there. They extracted it, and once they extracted it, there were a few commands running, task list and the find string, looking for Falcon. And they were pushing the Titan registry keys, and game on. Persistency is on that machine. Actually, in this case, the DLL was running a modified version of the QBot. This was not a small ransomware case. Actually, the client was saved just before the bell rang, because they got information from law enforcement that, something looks fishy on your side. Go check. There was a takedown operation involved, and so on and so forth. And they kept doing this thing over and over again on not only this client, but also on other servers. What they simply did is they did manage to get a bunch of certificates for a bunch of domain admins, because there was a vulnerable configuration on a certificate template. So once they got the certificate, their way in now was the VPN solution itself. They got all they need to run the VPN solution and continue their game. This is another case where another standard tool is used. Do you think this is a cheap one? Cisco, right? They know how to get paid. So what happened here is that threat actor stumbled upon a small thing, and that small thing was a server that was managed by an MDM product, called Cisco Meraki MDM product. So they hacked into that MDM instance for that customer, and there was only one server there because this was a test something. And this is what they tried to run on that server from the MDM platform. This was a couple of years ago, 2022. You see how they were like struggling with running different things, forth and back? Yeah, PowerShell curl, download this. Oh, that didn't work, certutil. How would we download something? What is this? Try to invoke web request again. And users and dd.bat, and so on and so forth. So all of these kind of tools of your choice will also be visible or possible to use. And then you can just tag these on top of each other's, regardless what the name and the brand and whatever else is. Terramind is another wonderful tool, if you would ask me, because we did discover this in another incident. This is how it looks like. This is just another management tool. If you look at the machine of your choice that you have onboarded, yes, you can do keyboard sniffing, you can do screenshots, you can do all sorts of things. And this thing installs as a kernel device driver. This is a legitimate paid tool. So no antivirus, no nothing will react on it. Zero detection for this one. What else do we have? Yeah, we have another flavor, which is getting hold of a trusted device. You see where this screenshot is originating from? In the middle section says Russian market. This is the dark web Russian market site. So this was for sale right after this device was actually registered. So the threat actor did a successful phishing attempt with a password reset on that user right after they added their device. They simply registered their own device. Once they did that, they got the whole configuration the corporate offered their users, including VPN access, including, and that was their way to persist in the environment. So this is just a few samples from the last 2 years. how often we do see threat actor persisting using VPN. The initial access is one thing, but they keep using the same. They never bother about deploying any other more or less sophisticated something, so they just keep going on with that one. The last thing, but not the least thing, I just have a few. Let me do a quick demo about this. So I will go here. And what this is about something we called abuse of view state. View state is something that was invented in the .NET platform. And when this came about, it is possible for a threat actor to actually calculate their own view state if they know the encryption and the signature keys for a web application. So if the web application tends to have a static set of encryption and signing keys, and I can grab them and I can reuse them, generate my own view state parameter. And I can just make a new web request, observe the folder behind, which says, let's see here, invoke that web request. And there is a small file created in the temp folder. There is an error message that says, yeah, you know what, the state information is invalid for this page. Your view state doesn't fit me, but I can create a file in accordance with the command I just sent to it. So I said, hey, run cmd/c, who am I, and put it in that file. Will you detect this? The threat actor can just, there is no need for more persistency than, I know your signing key and encryption key. I can execute code on your web server /application whenever I like to. And have that as my pivoting point into that. So just the lessons learned, threat actor doesn't have a need to hide today. That's the sad part of the story. We need to have better visibility because once they go silent, then it's difficult to find them. Normally, they don't bother about going silent. The most sophisticated in our experience, and these are like the 3, 4 I mentioned, those are the ones that went silent. Everybody else was screaming like Edge. Here we are, but they were not discovered. And we need to enhance our capabilities in doing detection and response, obviously. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Hasain, for such a rich and real-world example presentation. Now we have time for 1 or 2 questions. So who has questions? Please raise your hand. We have a question there. Can you please raise up so my colleagues can see me and come with the mic? They're behind.
If somebody want to get that as a sticker, there are 2 of them. I will put them over there.
I have a question about the DLL hijacking. When you mentioned that there is an example when they hijacked the standard Windows DLL, does that, so to say, rogue DLL has a mechanism to pass the actual requests to actual functions to the real DLL or not? Because it would crash the system, right?
Yeah, when somebody does the DLL hijacking or DLL sideloading, is it possible to pass it back to the original one, not to disturb what was going on, right? That was the question. Sorry, I didn't see who. There we go. Yes, absolutely. You're free to load that DLL and just pass on the same request to it, and then everything will be just fine and dandy. That's what you can do all the times.